So this is our text, and we had read up till this particular sentence, and so when his nephew Shotto came back and he told Rabindranath about his experiences, he was extremely interested, and he started crying, and he wanted to go to school. So, but that this tutor uh, gave him a piece of advice, and Rabindranath says that never in my life have I heard a truer prophecy. So the prophecy was that he would be unwilling to go to school later on. So let us start reading from here. My crying drove me prematurely into the Oriental Seminary. So this was the first school, the Oriental Seminary, which Tagore had attended. What I learned there, I have no idea, but one of its methods of punishment I still bear in mind. The boy, who was unable to repeat his lessons, was made to stand on a bench with arms extended, and on his upturned palms were piled a number of slates. It is for psychologists to debate how far this method is likely to conduce to a better grasp of things. I thus began my schooling at an extremely tender age. So, obviously, Rabindranath was very young at that time. Did not remember, he could not remember what lessons were taught there in the Oriental Seminary. But one particular incident, or the method of punishment, was still very fresh in his mind. And anyone who could not answer the questions asked by the teachers, he was made to stand on the bench, and that was the punishment. He was on his extended arms, on his palms, the slates were piled up. So he would have to stand like that, and it was really a very tough thing to stand with one's arms extended and carrying those slates. My initiation into literature had its origin at the same time in the books which were in vogue in the servants' quarters. Chief among these were a Bengali translation of Chanakya's aphorisms and the Ramayana of Krittivas. So, Rabindranath remembers how he started to read. What were the books he had read at that young age, and as he was brought up mainly by the servants, and we have one chapter that is dedicated to how the servants took care of the boys of the Tagore family. And Chanakya's slokas, aphorisms, that there was this Bengali version, and Ramayana that was there. So Rabindranath read these two books. A picture of one day's reading of the Ramayana comes clearly back to me. So here is a portrait of Rabindranath at a young age in 1877. So How old was he? He was 16 years old at that time, because he was born in 1861. So he was 16 years old. The day was a cloudy one. I was playing about in the long veranda overlooking the road. All of a sudden, Sotto, for some reason I do not remember, wanted to frighten me by shouting, "Policeman, policeman." My ideas of the duties of policemen were of an extremely vague description. So, this incident uh, remains in the poet's mind. He was playing in this long veranda, and the road was visible from there down below. And suddenly his nephew shouted out uh, that a policeman was coming. And Tagore here says that he did not have a very clear idea of what a policeman did. One thing I was certain about, that a person charged with crime once placed in a policeman's hands would, as sure as the wretch caught in a crocodile's serrated grip, go under and be seen no more. So it was uh, a very tough thing to be caught by a policeman. It would be something like being caught by a crocodile and taken under the river, into the depths of the river. Not knowing how an innocent boy could escape this relentless penal code, I bolted towards the inner apartments with shudders running down my back for blind fear of pursuing policemen. So obviously he wanted to run away, and he did not want to face any policeman, and he started to run into the inner house. I broke to my mother the news of my impending doom, but it did not seem to disturb her much. However, not deeming it safe to venture out again, I sat down on the sill of my mother's door to read the dog-eared Ramayana with a marbled paper cover which belonged to her old aunt. So Rabindranath did not want to go out again into the veranda, and he started to read this book, the epic Ramayana, which had a marbled paper cover, and it belonged to uh, his grandmother, that is his mother's aunt. Now, that was a dog-eared Ramayana. That is, uh, it has been used by many people, so it was an old copy. Alongside stretched the veranda running round the four sides of the open inner quadrangle, on which had fallen the faint afternoon glow of the clouded sky. And finding me weeping over one of its sorrowful situations, my great aunt came and took away the book from me. So Rabindranath was uh, very much sort of affected by the description of of an incident that was described there, and he started to weep when he was reading this book. And his great aunt saw that he was sad, and she took away the book from him. So this was the first time that he read, he started to read the books. And here we will we see the second chapter has ended. So his schooling, it is about his teaching and schooling. And we have to remember the name of the school, Oriental Seminary, and the kind of punishment that was meted out to the boys, and what were the books. The uh, two main books were a Bengali translation of Chanakya's aphorism and the Ramayana written by Krittivash. That was those were the two books. And this incident, which prompted him to run back into the house and start reading the Ramayana. Okay, so this is the incident that we have read about, and now let us pass on to the third chapter, Within and Without. Within and Without, this is the title of the chapter. Luxury was a thing almost unknown in the days of my infancy. The standard of living was then, as a whole, much more simple than it is now. Apart from that, the children of our household were entirely free from the fuss of being too much looked after. The fact is that, while the process of looking after may be an occasional treat for the guardians, to the children it is always an unmitigated nuisance. So, the standard of living that is being referred to here, that was not, that was quite simple for Tagore, and he is saying that his brothers and the other young children who were there, they were not taken care of. Uh, they were not really fussed over. That is, they were not, uh, their parents did not look after them all the time. So they were free to uh, do as they pleased. And in this sentence, Rabindranath says that though the guardians may find it very kind of a job that is dear to them to look after their children, it is a kind of an occasional treat for them. But the children find this as some kind of a nuisance. They do not like this, an unmitigated nuisance. So something that is that does not end. Uh, we used to be under the rule of the servants. To save themselves trouble, they had almost suppressed our right of free movement. So the servants were there, and they used to look after these Tagore and his companions. And what they had done was they did not want the children to move about freely in the house, because that would mean that they would have to go and search for them, uh, because it was a big house, and that would be extra job for them. But the freedom of not being petted made up even for the harshness of this bondage, for our minds were left clear of the toils of constant coddling, pampering, and dressing up. So Tagore here says that even though the servants had imposed a kind of a rule on us, that we were not allowed to move freely, still, uh, since we are not petted, we were not pampered by our parents, by the elders, obviously that was some kind of a recompense. So they did not like to be always looked after. Our food had nothing to do with delicacies. A list of our articles of clothing would only invite the modern boy's scorn. So the food they ate, it was a simple kind of food, and clothing, the clothes they wore, of course, those were also quite simple. On no pretext did we wear socks or shoes till we had passed our 10th year. So, till the age of 10, they did not wear socks or shoes. In the cold weather, a second cotton tunic over the first one sufficed. So, no woolen clothes. It never entered our heads to consider ourselves ill off for that reason. It was only when old Niyamat, the tailor, would forget to put a pocket into one of our tunics that we complained. For no boy has yet been born so poor as not to have the wherewithal to stuff his pockets. Nor, by a merciful dispensation of Providence, is there much difference between the wealth of boys of rich and of poor parentage. So, this was something that was done by all the boys. The fact that they loved to pick up different things, to gather different objects and put them in the pockets of the tunic. So that was a kind of an some kind of an entertainment that they had. Now, Tagore is here saying that they did not complain much about their food or their clothes. Only they complained when their old tailor Niyamat forgot to put a pocket in their tunics. And uh, the rich boys and the poor boys, they were quite at par. They were on the same footing if one considered the fact of their having the pockets in their tunics and what they had gathered there, what they had picked up. So it was more or less the same. We used to have a pair of slippers each, but not always where we had our feet. Our habit of kicking the slippers on ahead and catching them up again made them work nonetheless hard. Through effectually defeating at every step the reason of their being. So they had these slippers, a pair of slippers, but they did not wear those slippers. Instead, they were in the habit of playing with them, kicking them. And obviously, those slippers did not serve the purpose. Our elders were in every way at a great distance from us, in their dress and food, living and doing, conversation and amusement. So, the elders in the Tagore family, they did not mix with the children. They did not come to them often, and their way of living, what it was quite different. The way they conversed and amused themselves. We caught glimpses of these, but they were beyond our reach. Elders have become cheap to modern children. They are too readily accessible, and so are all objects of desire. So, Tagore here contrasts uh, the kind of elders that he had encountered during his boyhood days and what was now happening now that uh, the elders were easily accessible to the children. That is, they always were very solicitous to take care of the children. They were always fussing over them, which Tagore does not like. and everything is made available to the children. So all objects of desire, whatever they wanted, it was readily available. And that was not the case for Tagore and his companions. Nothing ever came so easily to us. Many a trivial thing was for us a rarity, and we lived mostly in the hope of attaining, when we were old enough, the things which the distant future held in trust for us. So, if they fancied something, a toy or anything else, they were not given that particular object or toy, and those might be trivial things, some things which were of no value really, but still they became somewhat of a rarity. And these children, Tagore and his companions, they were always hoping that when they became old enough, they would be able to get what they now do not have. So what they were wishing for, that was not granted to them. The result was that what little we did get, we enjoyed to the utmost. So since they did not get many things, whatever little they got, that was something uh, that they enjoyed, really enjoyed. From skin to core, nothing was thrown away. So everything was kept carefully. The modern child of a well-to-do family nibbles at only half the things he gets. The greater part of his world is wasted on him. So again, this comparison between the modern children and the children of his boyhood days. So how they are fussed over by their parents, how parents have become cheap for them, and how they are getting everything they want. And uh, the fact is, as Tagore here observes, the fact is that uh, these children, these modern children, they do not value the things that they are getting. To them, it is really nothing. It is of very little value. And they nibble at only half the things, meaning they are not really interested. They are not really interested in what they are getting. So most of the time, they are actually uh, sort of they remain uninterested. They do not play with what they have got. So obviously, those things are wasted on them. Our days were spent in the servants' quarters in the southeast corner of the outer apartments. So, as we know, uh, the boys in the Tagore family, they were brought up by the servants. That is, they were taken care of by the servants there. Now, we will get the description of one servant, and we'll see how he used to behave with them. One of our servants was Sham, a dark, chubby boy with curly locks, hailing from the district of Khulna. So, Khulna is now in Bangladesh. So, this boy, uh, he was a little older compared to them, and however, he was given the task of looking after them. So his description is here: dark, chubby boy. He was quite a healthy boy with curly locks. He would put me into a selected spot and, tracing a chalk line all round, warn me with solemn face and uplifted finger of the perils of transgressing this ring. So it was a kind of a Lakshman Rekha, as it is called. So, so that Tagore would not go out of this ring. This was the kind of trick that he played on Tagore. Whether the threatened danger was material or spiritual, I never fully understood, but a great fear used to possess me. So, Rabindranath was just a young boy at that time. He was a mere child, and he did not understand whether something dreadful was going to happen to him materially or spiritually, but he was always very afraid. I had read in the Ramayana of the tribulations of Sita for having left the ring drawn by Lakshman, so it was not possible for me to be skeptical of its potency. So obviously, though that incident in the Ramayana, what had happened to Sita when she had stepped over that line, that Lakshman Rekha, that was still fresh in his mind. And of course, Tagore did not dare to uh, go out of this ring, and he had to sit there. Just below the window of this room was a tank with a flight of masonry steps leading down into the water. So it was kind of a pond, small pond. On its west bank, along the garden wall, an immense banyan tree. To the south, a fringe of coconut palms. So there were some trees there, one banyan tree, a number of coconut palm trees. Ringed round as I was near this window, I would spend the whole day peering through the drawn Venetian shutters, gazing and gazing on this scene as on a picture book. So he could not go out of the room, that ring, and he had to remain confined. And he used to look down through the Venetian shutters. From early morning, our neighbors would drop in one by one to have their bath. I knew the time for each one to arrive. I was familiar with the peculiarities of each one's toilet. So the little boy was very observant, and he used to watch these people who would come and who would bathe in that tank. And what was the time? Each particular individual had his own time and his own peculiar way of bathing. One would stop up his ears with his fingers as he took his regulation number of dips, after which he would depart. So a person who would try to prevent the water from entering his ears. Another would not venture on a complete immersion, but be content with only squeezing his wet towel repeatedly over his head. So another person did not take a dip, but he was a peculiar kind of a fellow who wetted his towel and applied the water on his head. A third would carefully drive the surface impurities away from him with a rapid play of his arms, and then on a sudden impulse take his plunge. So this was another funny thing. Uh, this person would try to uh, drive away the impurities, and when he would feel that the impurities were gone, he would take a sudden plunge. There was one who jumped in from the top steps without any preliminaries at all. Another would walk slowly in, step by step, muttering his morning prayers the while. One was always in a hurry, hastening home as soon as he was through with his dip. Another was in no sort of hurry at all, taking his bath leisurely, followed with a good rub down, and a change from wet bathing clothes into clean ones, including a careful adjustment of the folds of his waistcloth, ending with a turn or two in the outer garden, and the gathering of flowers, with which he would finally saunter slowly homewards, radiating the cool comfort of his refreshed body as he went. So there were different types of people. One person was in a hurry. Another person, he would be very sort of in a bathe in a very leisurely way. He would take his time, and then after his bath, he would just walk about the garden, and he would gather some flowers, and after that he would go slowly uh, back to his house. So right from early morning, Rabindranath used to look out from this window and used to see all these people coming there, bathing and going away. This would go on till it was past noon. So from morning to 12 p.m. After 12 p.m. Then the bathing places would be deserted and become silent. Only the ducks remained, paddling about after water snails or busy preening their feathers the livelong day. So after the human beings went away, it was a turn of the ducks to sort of swim in the pond or preen their feathers. So this is the picture that Tagore has drawn, what he could see from his window, room window. And this is quite fresh in his mind, these incidents. When solitude thus reigned over the water, my whole attention would be drawn to the shadows under the banyan tree. Some of its aerial roots, creeping down along its trunk, had formed a dark complication of coils at its base. It seemed as if into this mysterious region the laws of the universe had not found entrance. So now his attention would be taken up by this big banyan tree, and he would be fascinated by the roots. As we all know, the roots of the banyan tree, they are some of them are under the ground and some of them are over the ground, and they have a kind of a creeping way of forming themselves into coils. And Rabindranath, in his child boyhood mind, uh, he would feel that the laws of the universe were not allowed entrance there. As if some old world dreamland had escaped the divine vigilance and lingered on into the light of modern day. So, a mysterious uh, place. It appeared to him to be a mysterious place, a kind of a dreamland. And all around it was the modern day, but it appeared to him to be a kind of a mysterious place. Whom I used to see there, what those beings did, it is not possible to express in intelligible language. So he dreamt of so many things, that he had seen something, some people or something, some supernatural beings perhaps. But it was not possible for him to express. It was about this banyan tree that I wrote later. With tangled roots hanging down from your branches, O ancient banyan tree, you stand still day and night like an ascetic at his penances. Do you ever remember the child whose fancy played with your shadows? So this is the poem that he had written later on. The Bengali version, I remember when I was in school, we had this book. Most probably it was either Shishu or Shishu Bholanath. So this poem was there, and the first two lines were like this: নিশি দিশি দাঁড়িয়ে আছো মাথায় লয়ে জট ছোট ছেলেটি মনে কি পড়ে Ogo Prachin Bot. So these were the Bengali version of this poem begins like this. So Tagore, what he had seen during his boyhood days, later on he expressed himself. At that point of time, he had not been able to express himself, but later on, of course, he wrote a poem on this. Alas, that banyan tree is no more, nor the piece of water which served to mirror the majestic forest lord. So that banyan tree is has been destroyed, and that water tank is also not there anymore. Many of those who used to bathe there have also followed into oblivion the shade of the banyan tree. And that boy, grown older, is counting the alternations of light and darkness which penetrate the complexities with which the roots he has thrown off on all sides have encircled him. So things have changed. With the passage of time, everything has changed. Neither can Tagore find that banyan tree there, nor the water tank, nor the people who used to come and bathe there. And he himself, he has grown older. And he has matured. He is no longer that young boy who had so many different thoughts, so many different dream-like feelings. And he feels that he has now been encircled all around, like the roots of the banyan tree, the coiling roots of the banyan tree. So that time has passed. So this is the you can say a kind of a memory that Tagore uh, gives us, and what he had witnessed as a child from that window, what he had seen. And these incidents were fresh in his mind. Going out of the house was forbidden to us. So this is what was happening within. So this chapter is titled Within and Without. And until now, we have been given a glimpse into the inner world of the young poet. Now, they were not allowed to go out. In fact, we had not even the freedom of all its parts. So the house was a very big one, and the children, they were not allowed to go to every part of the house. We perforce took our peeps at nature from behind the barriers. Beyond my reach, there was this limitless thing called the outside, of which flashes and sounds and scents used momentarily to come and touch me through its interstices. So Tagore was a curious child, and naturally children are curious, and of course he was trying to discover uh, things, and he used to look at surreptitiously perhaps beyond the barrier, and he understood that there was an outside world which was shut up. It was not a place where they were allowed to go, but the flashes and sounds and scents, so glimpses of that world occasionally reached him through the interstices or through the gaps. It seemed to want to play with me through the bars with so many gestures. So the outside world was beckoning him, but it was free and I was bound. There was no way of meeting. So how could he move on into the outside world. He was a child who was confined there. So the attraction was all the stronger. He could not go outside, and therefore uh, he felt this urge to go out all the more. The chalk line has been wiped away today, but the confining ring is still there. So Rabindranath feels even now that perhaps kind of a confinement is still there. Sense of confinement is there. The distant is just as distant. The outside is still beyond me. And I am reminded of the poem I wrote when I was older. So again, this is a reference to the poem. Uh, this is the poem. The tame bird was in a cage. The free bird was in the forest. They met when the time came. It was a decree of fate. The free bird cries, "O my love, let us fly to wood." The cage bird whispers, "Come hither, let us both live in the cage." Says the free bird, "Among birds, where is there room to spread one's wings?" "Alas," cries the cage bird, "I should not know where to sit perched in the sky." So খাঁচার পাখি and বনের পাখি, খাঁচার পাখি ছিল খাঁচাটিতে, বনের পাখি ছিল বনে. So this is the poem and the contrast between the inner world and the outside world. So it's kind of a fanciful conversation between these two birds, and the inner soul, it is symbolical, the inner soul of the young boy who was always kept confined. And when the time comes, he is not really prepared to go out. He is hesitant as he had been confined so long. So the contrast is here uh, emphasized. So the distant is just as distant, the outside is still beyond me. So Tagore has a kind of a feeling that perhaps the outside world is still beyond him, beyond his grasp. The parapets of our terraced roofs were higher than my head. When I had grown taller, when the tyranny of the servants had relaxed, when, with the coming of a newly married bride into the house, I had achieved some recognition as a companion of her leisure, then did I sometimes come up to the terrace in the middle of the day. So, when Tagore grew older, he was uh, uh, he was allowed a little bit of freedom, and the coming of a newly married bride. Most probably, this is a reference to his elder brother Jyotirindranath Thakur's wife Kadambini Devi. Most probably, I had achieved some recognition as a companion of her leisure. So we know that Kadambini Devi and Rabindranath, they used to talk, and they because she was a bit lonely. Uh, then did I sometimes come up to the terrace in the middle of the day. By that time, everybody in the house would have finished their meal. There would be an interval in the business of the household. Over the inner apartments would rest the quiet of the midday siesta. So, post 12 p.m., that is in the afternoon, when everybody would be sort of resting. So, the wet bathing clothes would be hanging over the parapets to dry. The crows would be picking at the leavings thrown on the refuse heap at the corner of the yard. In the solitude of that interval, the caged bird would, through the gaps in the parapet, commune bill to bill with the free bird. So, this is the inner garden about which Tagore had said. Now, so this was the time when he was he had grown up a bit, and he was not controlled by the servants so much. He was he would be roaming around here and there during the afternoon, and he calls this a kind of a freedom that he got of roaming here and there. So this is the account of how Tagore was spending his boyhood days. And today I will stop here and stop sharing this with you. So